The Umbrella Academy Season 3 Ending Explained. Well, 2 years was definitely worth the wait for Season 3 of the Umbrella Academy. With an introduction to the Sparrow Academy, Kugelblitz, and love and loss amongst both groups, I thought I'd explain how we ended up at the ending of the season and also that mid-credit scene. So let's get into it. Here is the Umbrella Academy Season 3 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. This season of the Umbrella Academy picked up directly where we left off after Season 2 occurred, where we had the group re-enter 2019, but in a timeline that wasn't the one that they originally left. We witnessed the Sparrow Academy in its place, with Hargreeves at the forefront. However, he appeared to be being given pills by the Academy by advice of Pogo, following the chaotic, inhumane nature that he had, in order to execute the mission that he's always had his eyes on. And this is what we saw the entirety of the season build up to, Project Oblivion. There were many different parts to the ending of this season, so I thought I'd break it down into different sections. What happened during the ending? Well, based off of the events that occurred at the end of Season 2, where the Umbrella Academy jumped timelines, they caused a paradox called the Grandfather Paradox. They re-entered a point in time where their mothers were killed before they were able to give birth to them, thus causing the Grandfather Paradox. This happened as well due to the fact that back in the 1960s they gave Harlan powers, and then later on down the line in 1989, when they were supposed to be born, following the death of Missy, Harlan's mother, he lashed out, and due to the presence that he could sense in people that have powers, he killed their mothers prior to them giving birth. So the Umbrella Academy were essentially stuck in a timeline where they were never even born, or were ever part of the select few. This then meant that there was a Kugelblitz that was formed, and was slowly consuming the universe as they knew it, and the countdown was on to see if there was anything that could be done to stop it. There were multiple options that we saw get explored, but the two main options on the cards in the finale were to either do nothing, which was told to us by Five as he saw his future self just before death, where he was warned of approaching the Oblivion, or there was the plan that Sir Reginald Hargreeves had been cooking up and knew was in place to essentially reset the universe if the moment were to ever be required. Hargreeves built his hotel, Hotel Obsidian, on the verge of a portal, which then essentially allowed him to walk through and cross over to Hotel Oblivion, where if the guards were defeated and all 7 of the Academy were to be standing over the stars on the center of the lobby, which mirrored the symbols that we'd seen all throughout the season, then he could drain the particles out of the members of the Academy and thus use the powers to reset the universe. This is what we saw happen, but not before Allison struck Hargreeves and killed him. This was after the admission of killing Luther, Klaus, and being prepared to kill all of the members in order for the pair of them to get what they wanted. We saw Allison strike up a deal with Hargreeves on the night of Luther and Sloane's wedding, and although we didn't hear specifically what it was, based on the ending I think it was pretty clear. Following this, we saw Allison press the button to reset the universe, after everybody had appeared to be drained, and it seemed to work. It brought some back to life, but it did strip them of the powers and split many of them up. Where was Allison? The ending for Allison appeared to be far different to what we saw the others get. We saw that Allison appeared to be back in the present day, but this time in Los Angeles. However, unlike many of the other members of the Academy, she appeared to be in a state where it looked as though she was fresh from the battle. The bandage was still around her arm, and she wasn't healed in the slightest. We saw her enter the house, and her daughter Claire was now finally there. And Raymond was also there too. But this would likely mean that they would have had to have been brought forward into the future where they're now going to be able to live out their days together, instead of being separated by time. I think that this was part of the deal that she cut with Reginald, where it meant that she would get her husband and daughter back in the present day, and she'd no longer need to grieve for them. The thing that's stumping me though is the question around why her injuries haven't healed, but I think that will likely be explored in the future. My initial thought is that I think it's likely due to the fact that she wasn't drained of any particles whatsoever, unlike the 7 others that were there. So with her powers at the strongest they've ever been, thanks to what happened when she was with Harlan, it will be interesting to see how she is with the rest of the group in Season 4, knowing that they no longer hold their powers. Currently, we don't even know if they're on the same timeline, but I would imagine that they would be. What happened to the rest of the Academy? Following the reset button being pressed, we saw Diego, Lila, Victor, Ben, Klaus, and Number 5 all return. We then saw Luther be brought back to life, and it was here where we saw that he didn't have his powers anymore. due to his physical appearance that he held being a lot slimmer than what he used to be. This then led many of the others to test their powers, and number 5 couldn't blink, Klaus couldn't summon the dead, Diego was unskilled with his blades, and Ben couldn't draw out his tentacles. One thing to also note was that Sloane was also no longer there either. Whilst there was a lot of confusion amongst the group, I think their lack of powers could be down to the fact that all of their power could have been drained from them in order to reset the universe. They were extremely gaunt, grey, and didn't look healthy prior to it resetting, so that could be why. They were all healed and in a healthy condition, with number 5 even having his arm that was cut off in full working condition, so maybe the remainder of the powers that they held was used as energy to regenerate themselves. We saw each of them go off in separate ways, with Lila stating to Diego that they can go off and live their lives. So for many of them, I imagine that's what they'll do. For now, at least. Number 5 said how he wanted to retire earlier on in the season, so it could well be the perfect opportunity for him to do so. But with them no longer holding their powers, it might not be as easy for them to just live ordinary lives, seeing as though they've never had that. So I think we'll see that get explored in season 4 of the show as they seek out Reginald Hargreeves amongst his empire. What was going on with Reginald Hargreeves? We saw in the final shot of the show we had a panning shot through the city as we witnessed Hargreeves' construction, Hargreeves' financial, Hargreeves' production, before panning up to the tallest skyscraper in the city called HE, which I'm imagining is Hargreeves' empire. He was overlooking the cityscape, looking on in what I imagine is the world that he planned on setting up for himself prior to Allison striking him before pressing the reset button. He was standing there looking on with Abigail Hargreeves, who we saw an episode earlier who was contained on the moon and was in a state of being deceased, so he must have also set it up so that she would be able to be brought back to life. I'm presuming that this is a former lover of his, and considering that she was in a wedding dress, I could imagine maybe she died on their wedding day that was supposed to happen. We know that Reginald was struck by Allison, so this could be a Reginald from a different timeline, but I don't think that it is. I think that this was all part of his plan. Luther was able to come back from the dead, so there's no reason as to why he wouldn't be able to bring himself back too. We also saw in the finale that he revealed himself as the alien creature that he is. I loved the line earlier on in the season where Pogo said how he'd lost his humanity, and then Hargreeves went on to say, "What humanity?" as a nod to the fact that he wasn't human. I have a video explaining all about Reginald Hargreeves' true identity if you click on the I button. Where was Sloane? Sloane was one of only 2 members from the Sparrow Academy that managed to survive the season, and she had the relationship and marriage to Luther that occurred. However, upon the arrival of everybody else back to reality, she no longer appeared to be there. When looking back at the final clip that she was in, she didn't appear to be any more drained than the others, which was what my initial thought was. Maybe she was drained to the point where she had died, but that didn't appear to be the case. One theory about her location could be due to the fact that Hargreeves was hid before he completed what he needed to do. He didn't factor in Sloane being transported back to the appropriate location, so she could quite literally be lost in space or time right now. Or another could be that since Luther came back from the dead, Reginald had played a game where to bring Luther back it meant that Sloane had to die. We know how twisted Reginald can be, so I wouldn't put it past him. However, with Luther going off to find her, I'm sure we'll find out more in season 4 of the show. The mid-credit scene. The very last thing that we saw in season 3 of the show came as a mid-credit scene. We saw Ben back on the very underground train that we saw his birth mother give birth to him in the very first episode of the season. We know this by the train number in the top corner of the carriage. He looked as though he had a smug grin on his face, whilst they announced the destination that they were arriving to. With him not having his powers anymore, he may well be going to find his birth mother, seeing as though they're in a timeline where they were actually born. We know that he always seeks the approval of a father figure, such as Reginald, so he may want to meet his family and build an actual relationship with them, and seek validation or approval. But with it being the final thing that we see, it must hold some great importance moving forward. I also scanned the QR code on the train and it takes you to something called Pogo's Tattoo Shop. I thought it was going to provide an answer on why Ben was there, but instead it's just a cool Easter egg. So, there you have it, the Umbrella Academy Season 3 Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos on your favorite shows such as Ending Explains, Theories and Predictions, and Character Breakdowns, then click on the I button. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you want to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review next, then head over to my Twitter @BrainPilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of Season 3? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.